Have you ever spent an immense amount of time and energy building out something, putting your heart and soul into a project only for it to fail miserably upon delivery? I have. In fact, it just happened recently, but not in the way you might expect. Let's discuss how I've recently spent several weeks of my life developing what I thought to be the best work of my career, only to find out that it was dead upon arrival. What's going on, everybody? I'm Logan Skis. Thanks for stopping by. I typically talk about things such as business visualization, process development, and my experience as an entrepreneur. Recently, I engaged on a new project I had put together. I called it the Scope Development Project. Now, this scope development project was a method of validating the fit for a long-term client engagement. The majority of my work with clients since I got out of the Marine Corps has been in the form of a right-hand man, working alongside of a business owner day in and day out, tackling challenges, overcoming obstacles, and blasting through blockers. That has been the bulk of my professional experience. Now let's get back to the story. I'm looking towards the future. What sort of challenge and opportunity is going to be able to connect in a way that I can do exceptional work for a long period of time, coming in as the right-hand man, working alongside the CEO, developing systems and process, bringing order to chaos, building momentum, and bringing clarity. This is stuff that takes a long time, a lot of effort, and isn't to be taken lightly. So this scope development project is a 3-week sprint. And the whole idea is that on its own, the project should bring value to the client. So week 1, we do a data intake. We take in information across many different contexts: strategic, operational, financial, cultural, and physical if brick and mortar locations are involved. The second week is all about analysis. So we build out our models based on the information we took in the previous week. The third week, we are producing a roadmap. The models help inform the development of the roadmap, the forward trajectory in the organization. Now, it's really important to understand where you're at to know where you want to go. So understanding the current state is imperative. To know where you want to go, it's not just one place in time. It's many places in time. In fact, it's a time horizon, and we measure that by immediate and short term, then medium and long term. So things such as, what do we need to implement within the next month? The immediate steps, and the next quarter, the short range objectives. From there, we would look at things like the rest of the year, 2-year, 5-year, and then we are making sure to clarify that visionary headspace. That's how we structure it between the current state, which is informed by background information, input from multiple sources. We then scope out the future states across that planning horizon. We conduct gap analysis to identify blockers, the friction points. Something about friction is very interesting. I learned about this originally from a book called On Grand Strategy, which is a phenomenal read. Clausewitz talks about the Napoleonic campaigns through Russia and how in a head-to-head battle, the French forces would have overcome the Russian forces. They were anticipating a fight to that end, that they would effectively meet, defeat the Russians, conquer the territories. But what Napoleon did anticipate was the style of warfare that the Russians would impose upon the French forces. And that was of withdrawal combined with a slash and burn, or razing of the grounds. So that way they burned everything as they withdrew. What this did was extend Napoleon's supply chain to the breaking point. So there wasn't enough food, water, supplies to catch up with the forward advance of the troops. The stretched supply lines were compounded because of the immense mileage that had to be covered by the troops, in many cases on foot. This is an exhausting effort. Clausewitz uses this as an anecdote for friction that is imposed on every operation of every scale, every context of human endeavor. Friction, whether large or small, it's this slow, grinding away reduces the momentum. When conducting a gap analysis, it's non-obvious to separately identify blockers and friction points. These things are oftentimes mistaken as a single thing. So that's critical. The other things that we produced were drivers and success criteria. The drivers are these things that are the carrot on a stick and a spear at the back. These are the whys. Why are we trying to go forward? That's what Don Miller will talk about as the philosophical problem we're trying to solve, hooking into that bedrock. Why we even want to move towards these future plans. And besides the obvious material outcomes, increased revenue, decreased costs, we want to have a clear picture to bring a qualitative aspect to a very quantitative process. We have current state and planning horizon, gap analysis, obstacles, friction points, drivers, and success criteria. And each of those things is read through by an AI, not to mention it's put together in a custom video presentation. It's branded, it's concise, and all you have to do is watch the video if you are pressed for time, overwhelmed, or you just don't care about the details. But like 20 some documents worth of analyses were produced. It's because stepping in as the COO, one of the worst things you can possibly do is start shooting from the hip, telling people your opinions, giving directions, because you are the least informed person in the room. That's a fact. The people who know the business the best, who understand the operating environment and the ideals of the organization, are the ones that have been operating it every day for months, years. The most wise thing a leader can do is get a thorough assessment of current state, desired state, the gap between the two, the things holding you back, and the things to help build momentum. In an ideal world, you do this 3-week sprint and it integrates into a follow-on engagement. In the case of it not being a good fit, to bring a lot of value to the client on its own. So everything I'm defining so far is just happening in that first step. So there's value to the customer and there's value to the service provider by way of increased insight into what you're potentially going to be dealing with. So you don't stop at the analyses of where they're trying to go. You use that information to build out a very thorough plan. And a lot of times in small and medium-sized businesses, there's an underdeveloped capability for project management. Most of the way that the company has gotten off of the ground has been through sheer force of will by the founder and a crack team of core believers that have worked hard to keep everything going. So the whole idea of coming in to a new organization as a fractional COO is best done with a high degree of awareness. Chris Voss, the FBI hostage negotiator and author of Never Split the Difference, has a great saying. He says, the goal of any negotiation is to have the opposite party walk away from the negotiation, think or say, I would do business with you again. The reputation is so important. Integrity is something you only get really one chance at. Preserving integrity is vital. So the way that you bring value to the client out of the gates is go through a scope development process. Now, again, business owners oftentimes have a low state of development for their project management and planning capabilities, and also a low appreciation for it. It's a nice to have, it's a luxury. No one is actually that good at it, much less actually likes doing it. It's a drag, and whatever we end up planning, we actually don't end up doing. Anyways, type of a vibe. That's why we sprint through it. What's reasonable is for the first week, we're going to take in the financials of the Google Docs, branding assets, the strategic planning. We're going to do interviews. The second week period, we're going to be crunching that all in together and putting it into models that we'll share back with you so you can get a fresh perspective on your business across multiple contexts. Lastly is building out a roadmap. It's the so what of all of this? Because if either the client determines not the right time, not the right fit, we at least want the return on investment for them to be meaningful. So that's why our guarantee is bold for a boutique consulting group, which is if you're not completely blown away by our work, you don't pay. So the third week is roadmap production, the so what of the work. And that is demonstrating across multiple levels on the planning horizon exactly what we believe should be done and how to apply our recommendations. That's a walkthrough of why I thought I did portfolio defining work. Now I'll tell you how it failed miserably. I only scoped out the timeline that I knew I could get through all of that work, the intake, the analysis, the roadmap production, and deliver it all. There was a lot of group discussions, joining meetings throughout those 3 weeks on top of the knowledge work. But what I didn't appreciate was the ability to take the information on the other side of the table. I show up with a plan ready to move, thinking that that's what was needed, right? A business owner doesn't have all the time in the world to sit down and plan. Doing all of that in 3 weeks seemed to make sense, but it didn't work because business owners are so involved in the operations of their company. They have difficulty capturing enough bandwidth to make a difference working on the business. Perception is reality, and being met with an overwhelming amount of information is a way to confuse people and to not get the point across. So the next project, it's going to have short form video content as a part of each deliverable. So that is some of the lessons learned recently. I think it's important to capture the oftentimes gruesome realities and put them out there for others to see alongside of things that will accelerate the learning curve. So if you're trying to figure out how the heck to do a lot of what I just talked about, I've produced other videos that show you in detail how to leverage tools such as GPT, Synthesia, Midjourney to do what would have taken weeks previously and make it minutes or hours now, as well as what the heck to do after you get the prompt. Visualizing a business is so key. And in fact, it's a missing element to the business ecosystem. When we look at first principles, tactical military operations have 3 key features. They're very high stakes, complex. They occur in rapidly changing environments. That applies in an entrepreneurial landscape. So there is similarities between these two domains at the level of first principles, but there is a big difference. One of the tools that has been implemented for generations in the military is called the terrain model. A terrain model is like a sandcastle kill bin Laden edition. Based on your time and resource constraints, we're going to use what we have available and then execute. There's always a visual depiction of the area of operations that we overlay the strategy on top of. And the reason we do that is because we do mission briefing. We tell a story, a narrative that aligns the team. It's so important. It's utilized across all forms of operations because it works. It's simple, effective, and the most junior members are oftentimes the one who does the work to assemble the terrain models. You don't have to be sophisticated and an academic in order to build one of these things. But on the civilian side, you can go through 100 books, all talking at different levels, and very few of those coherently align with one another. So you see tons of different models. Very few of them can actually present a single map. So you have to suspend a disparate constellation of viewports into an enterprise within your own mind. That takes a ton of energy. Moreover, everyone's perception is unique. Everyone has their own way of perceiving the world, of taking in information. So a mental model is unique to the individual. Despite having gone through meeting after meeting and presentation and document and Slack chat, it's still unique, especially if the mental model is composed of fragmented viewports into an ecosystem that's rapidly changing, very complex, and happening in a high stakes environment. When there already is a low emphasis on the priority of project management, which helps bring clarity and coherence and order to the chaos. So all of these things combined puts these team members in a state of like condition black, fog of war, going full auto until you've had enough pain. And it's quite obscene from my view because there's a very clear need for an equivalent to a military terrain model in the business context, a visual depiction of an area of operations that's holistic in nature, meaning it's one singularly integrated visual format that we can overlay our strategy on top of. We can run scenarios through, and we can use those stacked dimensions, those stacked visuals to conduct mission briefings, to build a story around what we're trying to do, how we want to do it, why we're going to do it, who's going to do it, when, all of that good stuff. The humans are visually emphasized creatures, and what's more, we are storytellers. Narrative compels the human mind and aligns teams together like nothing else. Make no mistake about it, mission briefing in a military context is still a story. Although it's lacking the flair of a Marvel film, it's presenting a future path, building a shared mental model that will align a team and allow them to operate as a cohesive unit, as a single organism in the area of operations. That is how you win battles. That is how you win wars. We need to translate that format, that leadership tool of a tactical level terrain model into the civilian context. Because if we're successful at that, and we're able to make it a data-rich virtual environment that's connected to your strategy, project plans, customer attribution, conversion, traffic, retention, net promoter scores, if you can connect all of that together and visualize it, then you've got a competitive advantage that no one else has, because you can heat map the entire thing, identify exactly where the friction, blockers, and obstacles are, choose how to overcome and blast through the things that are holding your team back, how to direct resources into yielding the maximum outcome for your business. That is the sort of thing that can build a shared mind, that can align the interests of every person in the organization with that of the organization itself. That is how you get people to do the best work of their careers. That's how you get people to show up every day and pursue the exceptional. Easier said than done, though. My colleague Jack and I have been trying to understand the nature of this challenge. Now, we're not the only ones. In fact, Peter Thiel's Palantir has been producing something along these lines. They have this thing called the Ontology that is mind-blowing. To even look at the website where it's defining the dimensions and the integrations, it is, in a word, badass. Now, is it applicable to the solopreneur on a laptop? Is it applicable to the small team with 3 or 4 people or even 24 people? Having seen some of the internals and screen recordings of the tool, I think this is something that is built for aerospace engineers, not the boots on the ground dudes who are trying to get stuff done. Reminding you, a military terrain model is often built in the dirt, so it's low resolution, and it's done hastily with time constraints by junior people, which means their technical proficiency isn't really that high. In other words, it can be easy, cheap, and quick to do, and it's massively effective, baked into the DNA of the culture for a reason, because it achieves success. I'm passionate about this concept because if we can crack the code, then we will have a competitive advantage like no other. It'll be a repository for us to use generative AI tools to help us produce solutions that'll move the business forward. It's a way that we can generate infrastructure, like a neurophysiology for the business that'll activate the psychology of a business in a way it'll make a business smart or sentient. That's the North Star vision, is your business becomes alive. Every single aspect of it, every detail, no matter how granular or how disparate, will be tied to the collective mind of the company that's interfaced with the human members of the team by way of a persona. It's like Iron Man to Jarvis. Imagine turning your computer on in the morning, logging into your business portal, seeing the entire business in front of you, and being accompanied by an ultra-intelligent, well-informed, eminently qualified thought partner. It's like having the right-hand man or woman to your efforts that works 24/7, 365, is tied into macroeconomic trends, market trends, industry trends, all the environmental data. and it knows every single piece of the internal model of your business, as well as where it's going and how it's moving through time. That is what the equivalent of a military terrain model looks like within the civilian context. And that is exactly what we are building at VentureMap. If you stuck with me through this entire video, first of all, I want to say thank you. Your time is limited and it's non-renewable. So the fact that you would share that with me is meaningful. What I want to do to reciprocate that is provide you with a free venture map. All you have to do is click the link below, tell me where to send it, and I'll shoot over a template along with some other materials. As you may imagine, it's in a rough state. Who knew that building something for several years would still leave it in an early form? But that's exactly where we are. We're a small team that have a vision for something a lot bigger than what we have now. But we're happy to share it with you and do our very best to guide you on your journey towards visualizing business. So click the link below, tell me where to send it, and I'll see you on the other side.